Hey everybody, Steven here from 40 Plus BJJ. Just wanted to jump on. I thought this was worthy of a quick video live stream in the group here. So since November I've been doing a seminar tour, been back out on the road for a series of seminars, and one of the questions that came up several times at the different locations where I was traveling to teach was about how I would develop the skill set that I was teaching. So whenever I go into a seminar, I'm always focused on, for whatever topic it is, really focusing in deeply on one particular area to bring up that area of the game. And if you're familiar with the way that we do things, we don't just teach, techniques that I enjoy or teach sequences or what have you. It's not about the moves, it's about really developing deep understanding of the core engine that makes that skill set work. So we start with the posture and then we work backwards from there. And the thing that we're least concerned about is individual techniques that arise out of that, but we will show some high percentage techniques from there, but really the game that we want to develop takes place at the level of posture, pressure, and of course the principle of connection, which Hicks and Gracie made famous. So that's the focus, because that really will allow people in a short period of time, in just a few hours, to really emerge from a seminar with a whole new skill set, not just kind of an assortment of techniques that they may or may not take away. And also the goal there is always to make those skills universal, so that pretty much everything you learn at the seminar is usable, as opposed to having to cherry pick out just a couple techniques that maybe you like or work for you, whereas the others may not. So we try and get as much bang for the buck as possible. Now that being said, we come around to the Q&A at the end, and I get these questions. Okay, so like in your training, how do you develop this? And I thought this was worthy of coming on because I do have a particular process. It's not that it's completely unique to me. I think other people do a variation of this sometimes, but I also see that maybe it's not done consistently, or people may do a version of it but not quite get the secret sauce. And so I want to just say as a quick disclaimer that whereas most of what I talk about is going to be universal for everyone from a white belt to a multi-stripe black belt in terms of a little tip for improvement, this is one that I would say I wouldn't be concerned with as a white belt. As a solid blue belt and up, this is a hack for how to really tailor your rolling time, your actual integration rolling time, free training time, to make it as productive as possible for you. But if you're still a white belt, you just got to focus on the learning the game and how all these pieces fit together, and understanding the core idea of each position that you're learning in your academy, and trying to assimilate that into your skill set, right? You're still in sort of that, just developing the grassroots of your skills at that point. So this wouldn't be as accessible. Once you get up to a solid blue belt, this becomes more valuable. So here's a tip. In our training methodology, it's what I talk about in 40 Plus BJJ. It's what we use in our entire organization. There's a progression of how to actually take a skill from zero to implementation, and that's called the I method. So introduction, that's the no resistance phase of static repetitions, dead repetitions, right? Whatever you'd like to call it. That's the one area where we don't have any live timing or resistance from an opponent. We're really just trying to totally understand what it is we're doing with a position, with a technique, so on and so forth, and try and make sure we're coming as close as absolutely possible to perfect form execution with no resistance. Then we do not jump right into full sparring or rolling, which would be the integration stage, the final I. There's an intermediary stage there called isolation. And whereas a lot of people refer to drilling as static rep drilling, which we call introduction, whenever we talk about isolation or using the word drilling, we really mean a live progressive resistance drilling. Okay, so I don't refer to introduction stage as drilling. No one in my organization refers to that as drilling. When we talk about drilling, we mean there is some level of resistance, but it's also not just going 100% positional sparring either, because a lot of people conflate those two and they're different. This is, and there's actually various ways to do this too. Some work better for certain types of skills than others. But it is progressive resistance drilling in that skill or area, position, so on and so forth, that we worked in class. Now, what happens when either you want to be a little bit smarter about approaching your rolling time, so it's not just quote unquote going hard and surviving and only really working on what you're already good at, because that's what happens when you get into sort of that fight or flight mode. It's very hard to integrate new skills. Or you're somebody like myself who, because my main focus now is being a coach and on teaching, my actual training time is really not class time. I still jump in and take seminars and go to training camps and things where I learn from my peers, but most of my time, disproportionately, is on teaching. So how do we still get the benefit of isolation training? Really the most important part of training. Everybody loves to roll, but how do you develop new skills? How do you bring up weaknesses? How do you really work out all the adaptations for certain skills that you may not be able to get to in rolling, right? How do you break free of just repeating the same patterns over and over again, doing the same dance with the same training partners? It's isolation. So I still do some rounds of isolation. Well, open mat time or something, I'll grab somebody and we'll just work out a problem. If I have a problem I need to solve, I always back up to do isolation. But the main way that I do isolation is actually hidden within the integration stage, hidden within free rolling. And so what I do is I take a certain position and I will work on that. So the skill set that I was teaching on this last seminar series, at every location I was going, I've really refined it over the last couple of years and built out an entire progression and made sure that this works for everybody, regardless of how you think, regardless of your body type, so on and so forth. This is fundamental that will help everybody's game get better, regardless of what level you are in the room, right? I personally trained this same skill set to make sure I had it with a high degree of ownership before I started rolling it out to people. And how I did that was pretty simple. So I went in almost every single roll for about a year, and it was very close to a year and a half, okay? Pretty much every single roll, I would start from this position and I would make sure that that was my key focus, okay? So in this case, I'm referring specifically to open guard, okay? So a particular type of fundamental, no style of open guard type of thing. It wasn't like I'm trying to start from X guard every time. I was working on this particular concept for developing the open guard, and I did this almost every single roll for a year and a half as my primary objective. And I had it broken into these pieces in order of priority. So it wasn't just play open guard. It was, I'm specifically trying to achieve this result. So the first thing I would work on is just making sure that before I try and hit a sweep, a submission, or anything like that, all I'm working on is the core posture and the connection to make sure that I can retain it. And so even if I saw other possibilities to do, I would purposely hold back for a little bit before I would even look for, say, the sweep. Okay, so I'd just be working on that. And what I want to make sure is that I'm working out from different types of levels of students and passers and different styles of passing and everything. I want to make sure I worked out all my failure points first before I tried to think offense. And then the next stage is I go to start addressing all those problems, working out the answers to those, and then, only then, so we're talking about like a solid month of rolling time pretty much. I'm not taking opportunities that might be there, or if I take them at all, it's going to be only after I've sort of proven to myself that I'm good where I'm at in the initial stages. Then I start looking for the offensive possibilities, so on and so forth, and just building. So it's not to say that I don't do other things rolling, right? But what it's saying is this was my far and away priority. And prior to that, I had another topic that I was working on almost every single roll for about a year. And so that's what I do. I pick it, and I always work Very important. It's not just the whole totality skill set. It's not just picking an area to work on. Actually break it into the pieces. So we follow, the model, which is posture, connection, and pressure as being the core, right? And then only after that are we concerned with the possibilities, which is what most people get fascinated with, which is the individual moves and technical sequences. Okay, that actually is least important. It comes last. The true fundamentals of the posture, creating the true connection and the pressures that you're going to be encountering or using either offensively or defensively, that is really the skill set that has the most bang for the buck. That's how all my pillars courses are organized as opposed to that, or around that concept rather. And then I get into high percentage techniques after that, but those are the possibilities that are going to emerge necessarily from the other criteria. They're not all just all over the place, right? There's a logic and a true rhyme and reason to it. So this is what I do in rolling, and this is a little hack that allows me to get way more out of my rolling time. Now at the same time, other things are happening in the roll. So it's not that you're hyper focusing on anything to the expense of the rest of your game. However, you are certainly really hyper focusing on one area and bringing that up to a high degree. Okay, so that's very important to understand the difference, because sometimes there'll be an objection. Okay, well, but then I spend all this time, but what about the other parts of my game that are falling behind? They're not going to fall behind. They're just not your area of focus. And when you approach it this way, I mean, this is some advice that I can get more specific, but when I break it out, I've been able to have peers of mine who are very experienced black belts, and I can actually give them some tools to get way better if they just make a little adaptation how they're approaching their rolling time. The other thing is, okay, so you said not so much pertinent to white belts, but a solid blue belt and up, this could be pertinent. Well, here's the simplest way to start to be able to do this. You need to be able to train always with, once you get a certain degree of experience and you become more experienced and a bit better than the newer students who are below you, experience and rank-wise and skill-wise, you need to have those people, you need to have your peers that you're sort of in that competitive back and forth zone, and then you need to have the people that can beat you. Hopefully, though, you have enough of an understanding through this training methodology that even if they're beating you, you understand how, where, and why. And then you can go back and really learn from that. You're not just rolled up in fetal position taking a beating and rolling, right, which is very common. And I try and coach people out of that phenomenon, because it's not just frustrating, but it's also not very productive, right? So we want to have all these levels, but the easiest way to start is to take somebody who you've got, a good 6 months or more of skill expertise on, right? Of game on. And you can start to lead the dance, so to speak, during the rolls so that you can facilitate the process of doing some isolation training within your roll. And if you get taken off track because they beat you on something that you're still trying to work out, you have the ability to steer it back to where you can re-enter the world or of the position or the posture that you're trying to work on. Okay, so that's very important. And you want to start there, and then you want to work your way up. So in my case, even as a pretty experienced, currently third-degree black belt, the first people I started working with were blue belts on this. And white belts, of course, if I roll with them, but really, productively speaking, I wanted solid blue belts, and I started to work on this. I wasn't not doing it with other people, but that was sort of, I wanted to take at least a certain number of rolls to feel completely comfortable with my objective with the blue belts, and then we move to purples. So you just take that down the line. So if you're a solid blue belt, you want to work on the white belts who are sort of just getting the groove in terms of rolling. Okay, that's why you have to have a certain lead time, like for this to be productive for you, you need to have a certain amount of experience. If you're a brand new white belt, you don't even have a game yet to be able to make this concept work for you. And then so on and so forth, right? So if it's, purple belts, you'll be looking for like really good white belts who are kind of getting close to blue belt, and the blue belts, and so on and so forth, right? And then you start to work your way up to the point that you will notice that even not only your peers, but even people who may have more experience on you, this area of game you're working becomes so formidable that whereas they may have solved this problem against you easily before, now they really have to work on it, right? Like they will start remarking how much this area has improved. And it's a wonderful thing because you can take an area within a pretty short period of time. I know I said like a year and a half, that may sound daunting, but that's just because I wanted sort of full immersion into this area. So I will typically pick an area of focus. Again, not that I'm not working on other things, but that's my primary area of focus for a good amount of time. And like, what am I currently working on? It's the initial posture of the escape. So having worked on the open guard concepts that I'm alluding to right now, then I moved on to the escape. So I'll make a little window where I let somebody start to enter in on the guard pass. And what I'm trying to do before I even look for an escape is to make sure that my posture and positioning is so rock solid that they cannot attain a better position. They cannot submit me, and they cannot attain a better position. And I want to go through all the failure stages there and work out all the different types of kinks against different styles of play. There's some people who are just going to try and flatten you out. There's some people that are going to try and transition around you, either going, over your legs or circle around your head to your back. There's going to be people that all of a sudden will stick a foot in between your legs and backstep into leg locks and, you name it, right? So I'm trying to experience all those things and make that part bulletproof, handicapping myself on seeking the actual escape, even if it's there. And then I start working on the escape, right? So you can start to see how you can take this in order of posture connection, pressure. Work those pieces first, over again, all different types of people. Then you start looking for the actual objective, which would be, can I sweep somebody, submit somebody from guard after I know I can retain it, or can I actually escape if somebody's on top of me, maybe even reverse them in the process, right? But I take the cherry on top and the frosting, right, and I put that as a lesser priority that I work on down the road, because first I really want to make sure the core skill is rock solid. And will I still fail? Will somebody still pass my guard? Will somebody still get a submission, or like flatten me out and get a submission from top? Sure. But then I go back and isolate that as well, solve the problem. Very unemotional about these things. Very not invested. If all of a sudden I'm working on one of these things and one of my really good blue belts catches me in something and sweeps me or catches me in a submission, I don't go home and have an existential crisis, right? This is part of the learning process that makes me better. So that same process that I was going through, where maybe a really good blue belt or a purple belt, caught me with something, instead of going like, oh, like this should never happen, and I go home pounding my steering wheel and getting all pissed off. It's the exact same process that will allow me to go and train with a high level, black belt, friend of mine or something like that, when I go visit, and from one year to the next, from seeing him, he was remarking on, wow, like that part of your game is just like ridiculously improved from the last time we trained. Yes, that's because I go through this process, right? And it allows me to consolidate so much learning time into one modality of the training and make it way more productive. So hopefully that's valuable to you. Again, this is going to be a little more from blue belt and up, but if you actually embrace this and you don't succumb to the temptation to just leap back into repeating the same patterns, doing the same dance, like just going to where you're strong, or dabbling a little bit and playing on your weaker areas, but then you kind of get sucked back into all your strengths, right? You actually take this, you embrace it, and run with it. You will notice that you'll really get gains, and you could get the same amount of progress in terms of your overall rolling skill in a way less period of time, which is why I always say all training time, all mat time is not created equal. So when people just say train more, it's partly true because there's no way to shortcut the requisite amount of live mat time, but what are you doing in that mat time? That can matter. That's why, some people get their black belt in, 13 or 15 years, and that's totally fine. There's no value judgment there placed on that. But I can tell you for sure that it's possible for people of the exact same athleticism, if they follow a different training methodology, to be able to be, you know, a 5 to 7 year black belt. And it's just simply a reflection, not just on volume of training, but also the quality of training time, because we've seen it. You know, it's not as impressive to take an athletic phenom and turn them into, you know, a high-level player as it is to take sort of a, you know, an average person who's got a real, you know, brain for the methodology and really plugs in and is passionate about it and thinks about it and solves problems and follows the methodology and see how quickly they can progress. That's way more impressive. If you want to find out a little bit more about the methodology, in the Facebook group we do still have available for free. I don't know how long I'm going to keep this out there. My skill development workshop accelerator, that is still free. It's got about an hour-long video which walks through the entire process, tells you exactly how to train. You know, I have testimonials on this from everybody from new jiu-jitsu students all the way to people that are multi-level black belts. And there's also my skill development ebook in there as well. So kind of a 1-2 punch, so broken down in video and audio and then also in print. And you can still get that for free. It used to be just available for my online academy members. And if you have any questions, please make sure to fire them off to me, and I will talk to you guys soon.